Alderperson Mieski.
Well, I don't know if it's so much of a question. I'm excuse me, I'm looking at the flow of traffic, how they have it going. Now, I don't see a problem with that. However, if anybody is wanting to, once they exit, go east on Main Street, they will have to go back up and around through the parking lot to get to an access point where they can go east, or they'll have to cross all the way across the front of the parking lot to the far end to go east. It would be better to reverse that flow so that there's less drive time through the parking lot.
Well, this is the exact flow that was used at the bank prior, and just
The bank is
to really destroy the whole site in order to be able to reach a car. So this is just the easiest access point for us to be able to use without reconfiguring the whole parking lot and everything.
I understand that. However, the bank traffic would not be anywhere near what the amount of traffic will be for this business venture. And the amount of traffic going through the parking lot. I'm just looking at what is the fastest way to get vehicles out of the parking lot area. It's just an observation.
Okay.
We switched to the view that has the total site, not only, that view right there. So if I understand correctly, we're going to either exit this from either the north or from the west side of that site. And then we're going to have to go, they're going to have to go all the way over to the far exit if they want to turn east. Not that one, but the far on over. On their side of the gas, or that one right there. Is that a accurate assessment?
That would be accurate.
They could either exit onto Kingsland Road by coming around and through to Kingsland Road, or as you pointed out, they'd have to travel to this exit point on the 51.
It seems like
to go east.
That comes around to the road to the east is going to be the best way to go. It goes up it exits out the north exit and goes through the parking lot and goes to the road to the east. Yeah, that road. Yeah.
If I may, again, the fact that there's 3 different ways to get out of the parking lot helps disperse this even further. So to me, it just seems like it's even better being in this position that it is right now. It might be a little bit further for some people to travel, but that's a business issue, not necessarily a city issue. I think it's helping the city by giving multiple ways to leave this facility.
It is a city issue if we start having accidents in the parking lot due to heavier volumes and more vehicles traveling through at faster speeds to get out and colliding with the patrons of the Pick and Save and other stores that are farther to the north. So yes, it would be a city issue.
Okay. Alderperson Carvalho, did you have some comments as well?
Yeah, I guess just kind of going along with what Alder Mieski mentioned, there is potential for some public safety issues here regarding, especially, I guess, egress, getting out of this site if people want to go east on Main Street. And I'm just kind of looking at the directional arrows and how the Pick and Save parking lot is set up. and trying to come up with something that might be alternative. I'm not seeing something obvious that would really make things safer. I don't even know if what Alderman Mayeski mentioned, having the traffic flow differently, which would obviously mean a major reconfiguration, or basically trying to like flip the building around in its positioning. So I don't think that would work, so that people are the drive side of vehicles is accessible to the pickup window. That said, I also had a question about potentially where they had the 2 bicycle parking racks. I would probably think about, even though they might be in limits for the capacity, they might want to increase their bicycle rack parking capacity. Just a comment or a recommendation, even though it might not be required, but if there's room for it, I would probably add as many as they can possibly fit on that pad or on that section that they.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns from commissioners?
Yes,
Mayor,
Seltzer.
Mayor, this is Todd.
Go ahead.
All right, I have Commissioner Seltzer and then Barman.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Let me just mention that one of the amazing things that I notice in that parking lot, where I only live 3 or 4 blocks away and we go quite a bit, people are amazingly polite. There's crosswalks, which stops the traffic, and nobody steps off the curb. I don't think in 10 years here I've seen anybody buffalo a pedestrian out of that crosswalk or ignore it. So I've always admired the grocery store there in the way they're set up and how smoothly things go and how polite people are, including getting out on 51 if you can't go around on one of the other streets. So I don't think that's the kind of area that you're going to see a lot of problem at all in terms of people doing what's reasonable and intelligent.
All right, so I guess my question would be either to Rodney or city attorney, if we start seeing some traffic situations there once the business opens, what is our recourse? I mean, are there options? Can we require them to do something differently at that point?
Well, once you've approved, and it seems to me that the issues we're discussing now really relate more to site plan approval than the conditional use aspect of this. I don't know if Rodney agrees with that. But once you've got the approved site plan, no, I mean, I don't think you can go in and require that they modify their operation now in response to new concerns. So you'll have to live with your decision.
Can we make that a condition?
Can you make what a condition?
That we could review the site plan at a later date?
Well, conditions are required to be reasonable. So if the condition is that the city can require them to come in at some future date and submit a new site plan and be subject to a new site plan approval process, I have some concerns about whether that would be deemed reasonable. In other words, you're saying we're approving you, but we reserve the right to take away your approval at some future date. So I'd be concerned about that.
Okay.
I think the issue here again is and this would be true not only for the CUP, but for a site plan approval. I don't have, Rodney, do you know where the standards for site plan approval are in the code? By chance?
We can look them up. Just one second. Michael will get the number for you.
I can see him paging through the book.
While you guys are looking, this is Todd.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
So the concerns have been raised are the same ones I have in terms of traffic flow and traffic circulation. And I agree it's probably more of a site plan issue. But I'm wondering what the boundaries are for the site plan that we'd be approving, which would be, I think, next on the agenda if I got things straight here, because a lot of the stuff we're talking about is really off the site of the building and parcel in question, even though it's part of the Pick and Save larger complex. The issues are more once they leave the parking area and the drive-through area of the proposed use and enter the parking area of Pick and Save. And so I'm wondering if that's even part of our site plan review, or if that needs to be addressed as part of the conditional use, because it's something that's really taking place almost off-site of the use in question.
Yeah, that's a good point. It may be that because we've got a lot here where the only access to the lot is over a private easement, it's not immediately, it doesn't have direct access to a public street, as far as I can tell. You know, you may need to take a look at your conditional use standards and see how those come into play.
Also, it seems like the mobile coffee shop does receive quite a little drive-in business. And I haven't heard anything about the vehicles entering and leaving being an issue. The overall parking lot entrance and exit. Just saying.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Michael, do you have
I
any
think-
luck? Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Well, unless the looking is done. But what I would think would make some sense here, again, because I agree that up to date, there hasn't been traffic issues, but I think as a planning commission member, we can't just count on that. We don't in other kinds of development contexts. We try to plan for making sure things work even under worst case stress and those kinds of things. And so to me, it would make some obvious things. You just use the quick trip development proposal on the east side of Stoughton as a case in point, and what we're making that developer do before we approve that option.
Okay,
but to
so-
me, it looks like they're.
I'm sorry, Commissioner
We're
Barman.
looking at it's. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just identified I'm looking at the standards for conditional uses that are outlined in your resolution. And it's interestingly enough, the second standard identified, if you're looking for it, the resolution that was included in the packet drafted by staff in the recitals, there's a list of recitals, and those recitals correspond to the standards in the code. And so if you look at the second bullet point, it says, here's the finding that you need to make, or the determination you need to make. It says, the conditional use in its proposed location and as depicted on the required site plan does not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property, character of the neighborhood, environmental factors, traffic factors, parking, public improvements, public property or rights of way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, or general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions of this chapter. So this is language out of your code, and that's the standard. So what you need to do as a plan commission is decide whether this proposed use, whether the evidence that's been presented shows that this particular requirement has been met or shows that it has not been met. And it does refer to the site
Thank you.
plan.
Thank you. Now, it just, for me, the site plan that's been submitted does not extend out into the larger Pick and Save parking lot. And so I think it's more of the impact on the neighboring uses. And while I don't have any problem with what's going on within the that corner portion of this development where the coffee shop would be. I think that there could be a little bit more thought put into making clarity with the circulation flow in and through the parking lot, whether you're going north and then east to exit, or whether you're going to the west and then south to exit, because there hasn't been any discussion of additional signage that might be necessary, or rearrangement of the parking stalls, or striping or anything along those lines to clarify that flow. I think that's one step that might be necessary here.
Okay, so my question would be, is that under the conditional use or under the site plan?
Well, according to
Well,
what Attorney Dragney just said, it's under the conditional use.
Yeah, I think that there is a conditional use standard here that asks whether the conditional use in its proposed location and as depicted on the required site plan, whether that results in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property. What I'm hearing is, if I'm hearing this correctly, I'm hearing that there's a concern about how traffic entering and leaving this particular site, whether that would have a potentially an substantial or undue adverse impact on the neighboring site.
So I guess the next question is do the commissioners want to try to make that determination tonight, one way or another, or would they like some additional work to be brought back?
I mean, I think it needs some additional work. I'm not ready to make a determination on that tonight.
I would also ask this question: is the concern that the applicant hasn't provided adequate information to you that allows you to understand whether that condition has been satisfied? Or is the concern that you already have seen evidence that shows you that that particular standard is a problem?
Well, as I look at that overall site plan, not just of this applicant, but of the whole Pick and Save and the Starbucks site plan, there's no real direction on how to get out of there. There's no markings in the Pick and Save parking lot, from what I can see, that really directs traffic to an appropriate place, you know? So I can see people that are unfamiliar with that putting in and just kind of feeling a little lost and maybe confused and have a problem here, or create a problem. Now I see some directional arrows on the north side of this site. And unfortunately, the one is pointing, if you were to try and exit the north exit, you would have to go to the left and then out. Yeah, like that. Instead of just straight ahead, seems like it would be a better flow coming out of this side. And then coming out of the west side, it doesn't seem to be any real, you know, I guess there's an arrow that points back to the Pick and Save, but after that, you either go back to the Pick and Save, and then what happens if you want to get out and head west? Or it's not really directing you in any direction except back toward Pick and Save. So,
All right,
yeah, that's-
anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I can see some directional arrows there now, yes. Okay. They're kind of faded, yeah.
Mayor, this is Todd. I would agree that I don't think we've been presented enough evidence to date on what's occurring outside of the Starbucks or the coffee shop immediate site plan. I think there's been the assumption made that it'll be just fine. The vehicles will just enter the normal circulation of the parking lot and navigate their way out. And I would like to see a little bit more. I think it's necessary to see more of a plan for that traffic circulation. And I'll give you an example. And again, this might not be their solution, but if you look to the north, the exit point to the north of the Starbucks site, where currently you can only travel south because it's angled parking and you can only come in from that way. There could be the evaluation made that there's plenty of parking in the rest of the lot, that you could actually remove that angled parking along there and just make that a two-way ingress, egress to the north. And that would allow easier traffic to go out that direction. And then just, it might be to the west, it might just be a matter of restriping so that the ingress and egress to the Starbucks isn't mixed in with the U loop of people navigating the parking lot if it happened to be full. Because that same lane is where you'd have to turn your vehicle if you weren't cutting across vacant lanes of parking or potentially full lanes of parking.
Okay, thank you for the suggestions. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Matt. I just have one thing that I think would be helpful is something that illustrates what the cross easement agreement provides in terms of where it applies and where the owner of that, or where this particular user would have a right to use the adjacent parking areas for pedestrian ingress and egress, vehicular ingress and egress. There's no visual that shows that. I'm taking a skim over the written easement agreement, but it's difficult just reading the easement agreement to understand exactly what it allows for. So I think it would be very helpful for if I were having to make a decision on this, to understand visually where does the easement apply and what does it allow.
All right, anything else from the commissioners?
I have a question or a thought. At the beginning, Plan Director Shield mentioned that this site was at one point, it was a fast food restaurant of some sort.
Correct.
Hardee's.
It was a Hardee's. How long ago was that?
20 years
Yeah.
ago.
20
Roughly.
years ago. And I'm guessing that the Pick and Save was in that location at the time, and that's probably when the Walmart was in operation next door to the Pick and Save. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recall if the traffic flow, I'm guessing that the Hardee's had a drive-through probably in the same location that the bank had their drive-through and the Starbucks is proposing theirs.
I believe that's the case. I believe that's true. Yes.
Okay. I'm just curious, trying to draw a parallel potentially between what historically took place and what worked. I'm guessing that the Hardee's would be a more comparable traffic volume situation potentially than the bank, although I'm not basing that on any sort of fact. So
Yeah, the other changes that we have to keep in mind though is that there weren't gas pumps there if you're heading west out of that particular location, which there are now. There's a whole gas complex, and as well as that lane coming from the north. They with the parallel parking now has, I think, a lot of their grab and go or quick stop parking lot. I mean, so they've changed the configuration of the lot and the nature of some of those spaces. So that changes the dynamic of those turnovers too.
All right, any other thoughts from commissioners? So the way I look at it is we do have a motion on the table. We could vote on that motion. We could postpone it to a later date. You know, my concern would be to vote it down. I'd rather postpone it than do that, to give the property owners an opportunity to take your concerns and work on some items. Kurt, I'll ask you, do you understand the concerns that have been presented and you think you can address them?
I understand what you're saying, but, you know, I'm having a difficult time understanding how the commission can look at this and say, just because it's the same owner, you know, that we want you to change your parking lot in the pick and save area to accommodate this, is what I'm hearing, basically. And I know the owner would be willing to do some things to a reasonable degree, you know, maybe putting up some signs or something like that to direct traffic to a certain area, but to have them redo the whole parking area, I can't speak to that, if that would be something that they would be willing to do. But when, you know, I've done thousands of these, and when we're putting these together, we're looking at the property proper. So even though this larger property, because it's by the same owner, we had an agreement with the property owner that that were separate. We couldn't force that property owner to put in signs and things like that, even if they said, we don't have a problem with you putting this, Starbucks into this location. So I guess I'm struggling to, for you guys, I think that's a reasonable thing to ask of the property owner, given the limited scope of what this actually is here.
This is Matt. Can I just weigh in briefly on that?
Yeah,
Because
go ahead.
I'm not sure you're hearing the plan commission the same way I'm hearing them. I don't think that I heard that they're saying you have to change what you're doing here necessarily. I think the first thing what I'm hearing is you need to demonstrate that the layout you have here from a traffic standpoint, including traffic in and out of the site and how it might affect the adjacent property, you haven't satisfied them yet. You haven't shown them yet that that's going to work in a way that is safe and for vehicular traffic coming and going out of that site. And so I guess what I'm thinking is you either need to come in and demonstrate in some way that actually there is good, reasonable, appropriate traffic flow in and out of that site. If you can show them that, then I think what I'm hearing is that should solve the problem. If on the other hand, you can't show them that, then you might have to be looking at making some adjustments to your plan. At least that's what I heard. I'll let any member of the plan commission correct me if I'm off base on that.
Yeah, and I think what I heard is there would be an opportunity to have multiple exits, but the one exit going to the north that could eventually get you over to Kingsland and out isn't really an option, because that's a one-way traffic coming the wrong way. So really that's not an option. And I think what I heard from a couple of the commissioners was if you could redesign that area there, so that could be an option for people that wanted to go east. They could go out the Pick and Save parking lot to the right, get onto Kingsland, go up to the light and hang a left instead of coming all the way through the parking lot to get out that way. So I think that's one of the suggestions that I heard that might make the commission feel more comfortable with the plan, because that's not really a viable option as it is now. Did I understand that correctly from commissioners?
Yes.
I guess I would argue it's not the most convenient thing you're not going straight out because these lots are at an angle, but you're just taking a slight left and then a right down the next aisle, and it gets you to the same location. So, you know, I'm not seeing it the same as you guys are in that regard. I mean, this is a giant parking lot. There's lots of opportunities for people to drive around and get to where they want to go. I think it's much better than having a direct access right to the restaurant right off of 51 there. So this allows people to dissipate a little bit more and prevents that clogging of 51 directly into the restaurant, which would be, something that if we had to isolate this area, that's what you would have to do without.
Tom Seltzer, could I just mention an idea? Empathize with both sides here, or whatever. Been in that parking lot many times, and it's not a problem. I hate to see us create a problem in having new traffic patterns designed by outside or inside companies that do that, and then submit it and then get back a response that no, you're going to have to resubmit it. I would feel that could be a perfectly spacious and adequate parking area, as it has been to extremes. I mean, I head east in that parking lot, and there's never any line waiting to get on to 51 down there. I think we might be wiser to send this forward as is with no changes. And then if some minor changes are needed, make them. But this could be a very detrimental project. And I don't see a problem here that indicates we should redesign the parking plan and striping and roadways. Aside from maybe some minor thing like different direction, make one street one way if it turns out it has problems. But that would be my thought. We're opening a can of worms here, so we want to be sure we want to dine on them.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
I agree with Tom. Oh, go ahead.
I don't think anyone is asking for a total redo of their parking lot. Or there's not enough information here, as Attorney Dregney said, where are the easement lines? What are they allowed to do? What aren't they allowed to do? Within this, outside the scope of this square of property that they are actually leasing. There's nothing giving us information as to what else they could possibly do. We just have not been given enough information yet to make a determination. So I move to postpone until we can get such information.
Can you clarify that for me? Because the easement gives them access to the parking area from everywhere, from the whole site. And like I said, it's the same owner. And if he has to rewrite an easement, which he wouldn't necessarily need to do until he has to sell the property anyway. So he can do whatever he wants because he owns both properties, and he's leasing to both of these companies.
Well, there you go. There's an opportunity to do some adjusting.
So I heard a motion to postpone. Was there a second?
Yes, I seconded that.
Okay, so I assume it'll be brought back when we have additional information, or should we specify a date? Next meeting?
Next meeting.
All right. And I guess before we vote on it, I would ask the commissioners if they were to bring something back before the next meeting, would you guys be willing to have a special meeting to discuss it? Or do you want to wait a month?
I'd be willing to have a special.
Yeah, I would as well.
Same here.
Okay. All right, so we'll postpone it till whenever the next meeting is scheduled. Are there any questions or comments on that?
Well, I just want to clarify that, because I'm the one who kind of stirred this up to begin with, is I would agree with Attorney Dregney that we're not looking for necessarily a redesign of the parking lot. We're just looking for the submittal to go beyond just the assumption that once they leave the Starbucks immediate site, that everything will work out. Because it's not like they're exiting onto a street. they're exiting into a parking lot. And so we're just saying that we don't feel comfortable just assuming that everything's going to work out, that if you come to us with a plan that lays out, this is how circulation will flow, and maybe there needs to be accentuation of striping or some extra signage or whatever it might be, or maybe it makes sense to make some subtle modifications to the parking lot. We just need to have a submittal of what the plan is for what occurs in that area.
I guess we're finding out what makes these outlets so challenging.
I
And
think
this-
two things that they might be able to look at as far as real data in order to make this determination would be, does the owner know what the incident rate of accidents at that location are? And if we could see those sorts of things. And then because essentially if once you strip the name away from the building, the function has essentially been the same. People coming in for a short period of time utilizing a drive-through, whether that's a fast food restaurant, a bank, or otherwise. Do we know what the average volume of traffic that runs through there? And if this is no different than a Hardee's, then yes, it might have been maybe not set up in the best way in the past, but can we know those numbers so that we can maybe have reason to adjust any of these traffic patterns in the future? So at least those would be like actual data pieces that we could attain and present.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners? City attorney, do you think we've given them enough direction?
Yeah, I think so. I'll just mention, I think I'd like them to speak to the easement, and I've been reading the easement as I've been listening to the discussion, and what it says is that the owner of lot 2, that's the lot where that we're focused on, their customers would have a right to use what the easement describes as those portions of the common area of lot 1 that are improved by the developer from time to time for vehicular access ways, as such access ways may be relocated from time to time by developer. So as I read that, one of the things that I think they need to also address is that the owner of lot 1 has the right to change whatever they might come in and show us at their next meeting and say, well, this is how the parking lot is laid out and this is how it's going to work. Another thing to note is that's subject to change. The owner of lot 1 has a right, as I understand the easement, to make modifications to that. And so, I mean, I think they need to also explain how do they address that possibility that things could change in that parking lot layout that could have an impact on ingress and egress to and from their site.
Okay, so I guess we'll take a vote, and I would suggest to Kurt, you can reach out to the planning department if you need any clarifications or if you need specific information from commissioners. I think most of them have tried to give you some suggestions, and I think you probably understand the overall results of the conversation are they just want a little bit more clarity on the traffic flow. And hopefully you guys will be able to provide that. I think this is something that, has some support in the community, even with the commissioners and the other coffee cart that's there. So, we'd certainly like to see it, take the time to bring back something that would, put people's minds at ease here. Any final thoughts from commissioners? Hearing none, so the motion is to postpone till the next meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And then the second part would be the site plan review. Is there anything additional you want to talk about, or you want to make a motion on that as well?
I'll move that we look at the site plan when we look at the conditional use.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Thanks for being here tonight, Kurt, and others. Next item is item number 7. The next two items involve Kettle Park West, Phase 2. And Director Shield, you want to start this conversation?
Certainly. So before you tonight is two related aspects of the Kettle Park West area. What's shown on the screen, or soon to be shown on the screen here, is how Outlet 1 is proposed to be subdivided. You might recall this large corner of Telemark Trail and Oak Opening Drive on the northwest quadrant was actually remained as a large outlot. So the parcels had not yet been created for this. But the developer has now submitted a request to plat this area and create these 6 parcels that would allow for additional residential, single-family residential homes to be constructed here. The associated item next is to rezone these particular parcels to allow for that single-family use there. Jim Bricker from JSD is here tonight if there's questions and further clarification, but that's a high-level overview of the desired result tonight.
All right. This one has a need to go into a public hearing. Are there any questions from commissioners before we do that? Anything you want to add at this time, Jim?
No, that was a complete overview from Rodney's standpoint. Thanks.
All right. So at this point, we'll close the regular meeting, reopen public hearing. Nobody was signed up to speak on this one, but if there's somebody at the meeting here that would like to speak, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Part of me wondered, like,
Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll open it up. We do have a recommendation and a resolution for the council. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I do.
Go ahead.
You know, as being chair of Public Works and talking with Director of Public Works regarding cul-de-sacs, if it was up to him, we would not have any because of the fact that they are a maintenance headache. Unfortunate that we're seeing cul-de-sacs in these in this plat. Does planning department have an opinion on this?
Yeah, we actually anticipated this cul-de-sac in this configuration. One of the earlier renderings for the Kettle Park West anticipated this as a possibility going forward. I think they were looking at potentially some other different land uses that might have precipitated a different type of layout. This cul-de-sac, while discouraged when possible, is a short one. One of our codes limits cul-de-sac lengths to 600 feet. Of course, this is much less than that, and it doesn't avoid the cul-de-sac as you noted. There is at least one other cul-de-sac in the Kettle Park West development that is already platted, and this would be the second one. Actually, the other one's kind of an eyebrow, if you will, kind of a slightly different configuration. I'll zoom out to that in a moment.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Yeah, I mean, we put that pretty quick. It was funny, the very first person.
Okay, hearing none. So there is a need for a recommendation to the council It looks like Rodney's pulling up something here. We'll see what this is.
Yeah, this shows the other eyebrow, if you will, in the western part of the Kettle Park West plat. These are usually used to obtain a usable additional parcels instead of very deep, long parcels of lots. And I think that's probably also reflected in the one that's before us tonight. It recognized the potential here to create somewhat long parcels, but if this was not here, we'd probably have less building sites available here.
Okay.
Yeah, the issues that Public Works has is with snow removal in these areas.
Right.
Usually takes 2 pieces of equipment to get these cleaned out versus such as the eyebrow where you would only need a plow.
Yeah, I would add that this is something that we've really tried to minimize, not only with Kettle Park West, but with other developments we're working on as well. 51 West comes to mind. You know, some stuff that AGR Net's working on as well. So I definitely agree with you that we certainly are not promoting these things. Once in a while, they're a necessity, but our goal is to minimize them as much as we can and still have, you know, good land use and you know, higher density where possible. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments on this? Otherwise, there is a resolution in the packet. I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to consider that.
Mayor, I move to conditionally approve the preliminary plat and send it to City Council.
Is there a second? Who was the second?
Me,
Tom.
Schumacher.
Okay. Any more
Either one,
discussion
take
on
your
this
pick.
one? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion does carry. Item number 8 is for rezoning. Go ahead, Director Shield.
Yeah, really just the precursor to this was once the lots are created, the desire is to create these lots as SR5, which is a single family residential zoned property. And I think that's outlined clearly here. I'll leave the image of the 5 lots here, but the SR5 is a single family residential zone.
All right, any questions or comments on this one before we go into the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the meeting, reopen for public hearing. Nobody signed up for this one, but if there's anyone that would wish to speak, go ahead. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and reopen for our business. We're also looking for a recommendation on this one to the council. Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add on this one?
Nothing to add on this one. Again, this has been part of the comprehensive plan discussion for a number of years, and this is just cleaning up the way we were able to divide the property.
Yeah. Does that mean you guys are gonna start this year?
I'd have to defer to Dennis. He was on somewhere here.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to recommend this to council.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on this one? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Future agenda items. Do we have anything on the docket, Rodney?
Well, you'll actually have a final plat for this Kettle Park West area at a subsequent meeting. Obviously, you'll have the Starbucks CUP site plan back again. Those are the obvious ones that we'll have. The mobile mobile food vending will be coming back again as well. So a number of items that we'll be looking at in the near future.
All right, if we get something back from Starbucks between now and the next meeting, we'll throw out some dates and see if it works out for commissioners. We appreciate the flexibility. We like to keep things moving if we can, but we'll see what they come up with. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Second.
All right, take your pick. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Anyway.